Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Oneida Public Library. This next Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we have the Jim O'Mahony Trio performing. And on November 2nd, John Cady is going to be here talking about his new book on the electric railroads. Today we're having our salute to World War II veterans. We have County Historian Matt Ertz as our host, and Mr. Leonard Ressegger is going to be giving us a talk. So,
thank you,
Mr.
David.
Ressegger. Wow.
So before we get started, just out of curiosity, does anybody know what newspaper this is?
Community Commandment.
It's a local newspaper.
That used to be from Oneida Community.
Yeah, the Oneida Limited published a newspaper during World War II.
Yeah.
Much different than your typical kind of era newspaper, because number one, they weren't governed as much by the military guidelines, because they were just given. It was just given to the folks that worked at the Limited and that were part of the community. But the neat thing about it is they kept incredible records of what they were making, what they were doing, and their soldiers that served overseas. So kind of an interesting side plot. A lot of our information we get about Madison County in World War II. Of course, Oneida Limited itself, the factory is in Oneida County, but the community is in Madison County. But the creek that separates us. So a lot of the information we get comes from this newspaper, and we're very appreciative of the Mansion House helping us. We'll put the stuff up in a minute, but the posters that you kind of see along the back wall here, all of them were actually hung in Madison County at one point in time or another. The Hamilton Historic Commission came into possession of huge quantity, which is a wonderful thing. We're very appreciative of them letting us use them. But we'll talk just for a couple minutes about what Madison County did during the war. You want to hit the arrow? Thank you, Bruce. So approximately 16 million soldiers from the United States served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II. Roughly 10%, about 1.3 million, came from New York. The last number we're giving it is just a rough guesstimate, if only because, I'm going to turn off the light so you can see a little better, if only because the records are not released yet. They won't be released till 2020 when census information becomes available. At that point, we'll have a better idea. Based on the information we know, we assume there's somewhere around 4,000 soldiers left from Madison County as well. Go ahead, Bruce. Roughly 400,000 U.S. soldiers died while serving overseas. Of those, 31,000 were New Yorkers. Of those, 170 were Madison County men. The state of New York lists 103 actually from Madison County as dying. We found a bunch more. The state regulated it by basing it on where did you enlist, and we based it on where were you from. A lot of guys would go to Syracuse, would go to Watertown to try and get a specific spot that they wanted. Go ahead, Bruce. The first soldier who was killed in action was Laverne Austin of Perryville. He was on the USS Arizona when it was attacked in Pearl Harbor. He died. He's at the bottom of the sea of Pearl Harbor. I believe he does have a stone in Peterborough Cemetery, if my memory serves me right. The last known resident was Michael Bruno of Canastota, who died of complications from pneumonia in 1945. There were actually soldiers that are listed as dying after him. Most of those were folks who went down in a plane crash or were missing, and they wait a year to declare you dead based on military standards. He died. He actually made it back to the United States after the war, and unfortunately, he had pneumonia that he got in France, somewhere in France, came home, was in Utica Hospital for a little while, actually came back to Oneida or Canastota briefly, and ended up out west in a hospital, western New York, in a hospital, and died there. Go ahead. During the war, Colgate University actually became one of 131 colleges to become a V-12 naval training program. And what that was basically if you came in and studied at Colgate, they would offer you a path to a naval commission. You would come out as an ensign. Other local universities that took part, Syracuse University took part in a medical training program. Rochester University did, Columbia University in New York, all took part in this program. It was part of a training. They actually converted Colgate part of the field to training. There's some photos of it down at the county, and Colgate has a huge collection of photos. So Colgate actually shifted a little bit too. Go ahead, Bruce. So we'll shift a little bit to talk about the industry that changed in Madison County. The former National Casket Company, at this point in time, it was Stanton Paper Box, actually converted to wartime production. They made paper boxes. Like everything else in the war, they needed to be shipped, so they started producing. They had government contracts that they shipped items in, and that was their first contract. Oneida Limited has kind of two neat stories. Number one, they earned some $54 million in military contracts during the war. But the other thing they did was they became one of the first industries to actively advertise to women. They started advertising when your husband comes home and gives you that big long kiss, he's going to want to be served on the finest china he can, not some pauper's grade china. You need Oneida china. They actively targeted women, specifically with images like this, wartime soldiers coming home, stuff like that. They were very aggressive in their marketing in wedding-style magazines, as well as Women's Day and stuff like that. Targeting women, trying to get them to make their husbands happy with Oneida community stuff. Go ahead, Bruce. They produced during the war a ton of stuff, including silverware, surgical tools, rifle sights, parachute releases, hand grenades, shells, survival grenades, bayonets, aircraft fuel tanks, and chemical bombs. So a massive quantity. This up here is a gas tank for a B-52. Go ahead.
What?
That was a gas tank.
Not for a B-52.
That's not a B-52?
The B-52 didn't come out till the 50s.
What was the precursor? It was for the large-scale bombers.
B-24.
Large-scale bombers.
Yeah, B-17 or B-24.
B-17 was the early one they all liked, and then they went to the B-24, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay. They, during the war, purchased the Rex Watson, if you're familiar with Canastota at all. The Watson wagon that's now on display in Canastota, in the 1930s, it reformed as the Rex Watson Company. They started producing buses, amongst other commercial-style vehicles. They kind of were having problems. They went belly up. Oneida Limited took them over. And can anybody guess what these are?
Is that a crash truck?
No.
No?
It's a mobile photo lab.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
It needed the ability to develop photos. Most of these actually ended up on naval ships. You can kind of see this is a huge long line of them being made in the factory. They went on to develop some other things. Go ahead. Including pontoons for pontoon bridges. You can kind of see the pontoon bridges there. I had someone tell me before, I believe that's a Sherman tank going across it right there. It's a hard photo to see, but as well as you've got the truck that carried them across. So they developed a number of different things. The Rex Watson. Go ahead, Bruce. The Rex Watson, like Oneida Limited, actually earned Army Navy E for Excellence Awards, as well as 3 additional stars for good wartime production. This is a bayonet that was made at Oneida Limited. Go ahead, Bruce. The Westcott Chuck Company is one of the most interesting companies because we just can't find enough about it. After the war ended, the company made keyless chucks. The Oneida Dispatch put out a news release about what companies did during the war. The Westcott Chuck is simply listed as working on the Manhattan Project. And everybody know what the Manhattan Project is? Development of the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
We don't know what they did. The contracts were not ever made public, unless the industry that did it had them. Westcott Chuck went out of business, I want to say in the late 60s. Most of the facility burned down in a fire in the 1970s. Go ahead, Bruce. The Company of Master Craftsmen, which became, I can't think of the name of the second one. What's that?
Jack Snacks.
I don't know. Became a furniture facility, Keller. The Keller Furniture Company was a subsidiary of W.J. Sloan factory in New York City. They made glider wings, amongst other things, as well as naval furniture. Gliders they could not carry enough in typical planes, so they would actually hook planes to the back and tow them. The glider wings were made in Oneida. I don't know about the rest of them. They always just listed them as the wings. And as I said, they made furniture that went on naval ships as well. Go ahead, Bruce. Oneida Heater. Oneida Heater's kind of interesting. They were a vault company. They went out of business right before the war started. They reformed because the factory was still viable, and they started producing some form of aluminum product. We don't know exactly what. There aren't very many people left that worked there during the time frame. A couple folks have told me it was some form of aluminum head. but for what, we don't know. After the war, they reformed as Oneida Royal Heater, or Oneida Heater, depending on which one you want to go with, but and started making furnaces. They lasted for a pretty long time. They stopped being made, 8-10 years ago or so. Go ahead, Bruce. And of course, the final big-time war production we had was Keller Laboratories. Keller Motor Company was an office of Frank Keller. During the war, he could not get cars, he could not get tires. So he had to come up with a different way to make money, and he invented a hand crank that soldiers, you had to do plaster, and when they would injure themselves, build that cast around their arm. He invented a crank where the arm or the limb would sit, and they could take the crank and it would wrap plaster over the arm, basically making a cast. It was much quicker, it was much more convenient, it was portable. So if you didn't have a nurse, you could still have someone do it. Made a lot of money on it. They actually earned an E award. This is the invitation to the ceremony that took place at Oneida High School. This is the women that worked at the facility. After the war, he patented it, tried to put it out to sale, and they went, no, it costs too much. We're going to go back to having the nurses do it. Keller Laboratories did stay open. He invented a few other things, but nothing that had the success of that. I think that's it. All right, so we're gonna stop this, and we're gonna interview our veteran of the day, Mr. Leonard Ressegger. So I'm gonna turn this off. Close you up. We'll turn on the lights. All right. Focus out on. All right, ready?
Okay,
Where did you, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where did you enlist?
Syracuse,
Okay, in the Army?
Army.
Okay. Why did you pick the Army?
I wanted to get in the Air Corps.
Okay. What was attractive about the Air Corps?
Well, ever since Lindbergh went to Paris, I was just a young kid, and I was hooked on flying. And that was my ambition, to be a pilot. So I figured I'll join the Air Corps. Okay, down in, I joined at Syracuse. They sent me to Niagara Falls, and from there I went to Camp Wheeler, Georgia, right down the center part of Georgia, right just about 20 miles outside of Macon. And that was where we took basic training. And our basic training, I think, lasted 26 weeks. And some of the pictures there reminded me of basic training. And during basic training, they had the opportunity to sign up for the Air Corps. So I signed up, and I passed everything up to the eye exam. Okay, now this being in the summertime, harder than all get out. And my name began with R. I laid down on the floor and went to sleep, waiting for my turn to go in and have the eye exam. So when it came my turn to go in, one of the guys kicked me and said, "Hey, you're next." So just waking up, I flunked the eye exam. So, which I tell everyone, I think that was a godsend, because I think that saved my life. Because my theory is, if I'd gotten in the Air Corps, got flying an airplane, I tell everyone, up there's no place to hide. Down here in the infantry, you can dig a hole, climb in, and I dug a lot of holes. So, like I say, I think that was an omen. You know. Well, anyhow, they put me in infantry, and I finished basic training. Came home on a couple weeks leave, and when I went back, let's see, where did that play? I reported back. I think I reported back to Fort Dix. Yeah, anyhow, I was in Fort Dix for a week or two, and they shipped us to Newport News, where we boarded a Liberty ship. And I don't recommend a Liberty ship for anyone, believe me. I forgot how big they were, but they aren't very big. But in number 2 hold was maybe twice as big as this room, just about as high. There were 460 of us in number 2 hold, and they were stacked 8 or 10 high on bunk beds. And I'd been smart. I found a bunk right underneath the stairway, a ladder they used to call it in the Navy. I found a bunk underneath it. If this thing's going to get hit, I'm going to be near the escape route. So anyhow, like I say, I think there were 460 of us in that one hold. And we were in a convoy I think it was one of the biggest convoys that ever went across the ocean. And it took us forever to get across. We were on the ocean 3 weeks. And out of that 3 weeks, we, incidentally, food, we get fed twice a day, not 3 times. And the food, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone either. But out of those 3 weeks, we spent 3 days and 3 nights in rough weather. We couldn't go out on deck, and the rails of the boat were actually dipped in the water. And we couldn't go out on deck. We had no fresh air. Some of the soldiers got sick, and the smell was something like you couldn't believe. And a couple of them fell out of the bunks, broke arms, broke a leg. And I just happened to think, there was one guy, he boarded ship, and no one ever saw him until we landed in Oran, Africa. We don't know where he was, where he stayed. He had a beard like that. We landed in Oran, Africa. But anyhow, like I say, this storm we got in, you wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. Before it got so rough, we go out on deck, we'd ride up in the bow of the ship. We'd come to a wave like that. How are we ever going to get over that one, you know? But, well, obviously we made it. We landed in Oran, Africa. Oh, I can't remember, the first part of November, I do believe. And there was one fellow on the ship, he was studying to be a priest. And he didn't smoke or swear or anything, but he took one look at Oran, Africa, and he says, "Give me a cigarette." Actually, the harbor in Oran was beautiful, it was nice. But we were stationed outside of Oran, maybe 23 miles or so, just outside of next to a mountain they call it Lion Mountain. And there was quite a story about Lion Mountain when the troops were there. Now, there wasn't any fighting in Africa when I got there. So, anyhow, the story about Lion Mountain, some general, colonel, whatever, he led some troops up the side of that mountain in daylight, and they got massacred. I mean, there was quite a story about that at one time. But anyhow, then I boarded ship, I forgot what date, but anyhow, Sicily had already been invaded by the time when we boarded the ship, and the 4th, 5th Division invaded Sicily. And that was kind of a messed up deal because the Air Force was supposed to come in and drop paratroopers, and they missed their targets, and it kind of screwed everything up. And the 45th, they took quite a beating in Sicily. So we landed in Salerno. Now, I didn't land in invasion in Salerno. The 36th had already invaded Salerno, and when I joined up with them, they were just a little bit north of Naples. And I joined up, and they made me second scout, which I said, "What happened to the other guy?" He said, "Well, you don't want to know." So I thought, thanks a lot. But anyhow, I joined up with the 36th, the 142nd Infantry, Company C, I think it was. And we went up through, and one of the battles that was really rough was the Rapido River. Now the Germans, all of them, all the time, they had the advantage of the high ground. Every place we went, they had the artillery outlooks and everything. I mean, we were just sitting ducks because we really had no cover. But we get bombarded like I'll get out from the artillery. And occasionally the aircraft, and incidentally the aircraft, the Stuka dive bomber, I don't know if anyone had heard about that, but that made a terrific noise when it came down. They had some kind of a propeller, whatever, they fastened to the landing gear. And when that thing go into a dive, I'm telling you, it would just scare the living daylights out of you. Fortunately, we only saw them once or twice, so we didn't have to put up with that. But anyhow, like I say, the Rapido River, we had to cross that. And let's see, the British Army, they were on our right flank, and the, I think 34th Division was on our left. So incidentally, the divisions over there, the 3rd Division, the 34th, the 36th, and the 45th were the divisions that were in Italy. Now the 3rd Division was quite active even after the war, and they went through Italy, they went through France, they went through Germany. I mean, that division, I would hate to have been in that because they got all the dirty work, in my opinion. But they did great. They won a lot of battles, won a lot of medals and so forth. Of course, they had a lot of casualties too. But like I say, the Repeater River, okay, let me think, it was kind of a small, it was only about 15 yards wide, I guess, but it was fast flowing and cold. And the Germans were of course, are on the other bank. And our first attempt to get across was early one morning. And we took a lot of casualties. We were repelled, we sunk back.
You didn't have bridges at all, no pontoon bridges? Did you have bridges to go on, or were you swimming across?
Not at that time. Eventually they did get some, but that was after a couple more attempts. That was an early morning attempt, and one other time we tried to cross, and I'll never figure out why, during the daylight. And that was really, it was a massacre. I mean, we were repelled on too. So anyhow, make a long story short, the third attempt we finally did get across, and which are really glad. And then from there, I'm making a long story short, but from there, Angel, yeah, they pulled us back in rest area for a while. And as a coincidence, in the rest area, I met up with Leonard Fisher. I don't know if anyone remembers him. When I met him, the Red Cross was serving donuts and coffee. Leonard was sitting under a tree like this. He had fungus on both arms. I never did find out what happened to him afterwards, but I met him, and Ken MacArthur. I was told he was in the 36th Artillery. I never did see him, but I had an idea about where he was. And who else did I see over there? Oh, I'll tell you about seeing down. Anyhow, we're in the rest area. And then the invasion of Anjo. And we were in reserve that we didn't go into the actual invasion, but we went in afterwards. And our foolish government, our foolish generals, the Monte Casino, wherever it was, up on the hill. Now, the beachhead on Anjo was flat for several hundred yards, but up on the mountain, the casino is up there, and it was a historical shrine, you might say.
Monastery?
Yeah, monastery, yeah. And they didn't really want to destroy it, but it was, I don't know, built something around 1700, something like that. But it was killing us. They could see us, the Germans' artillery, and they were outposts for the artillery, and they could see us. Right, we light a cigarette, they could see us. But anyhow, they finally did bomb it. Well, before that, we wanted to bypass it. We could bypass it and cut the Germans off, and eventually they'd run out of ammunition. They had no place to go. But no, they didn't want to bypass it. But anyhow, we finally did. They finally did bomb it, and okay, we did go up and take it. Excuse me. And about that time, we were pulled back and reserve again. Oh, and incidentally, it rained. Now this is in the wintertime now. It rained steady for, I think, 19 days straight. The temperature at night got down in the low 40s, early high 30s. We had no place to go. We were soaked. And I was never so miserable in all my life. And we would take our socks off and take our shoes off because we didn't have get trench foot. And I almost got it. I've worn white socks ever since then. I've worn white socks ever since the Army. And even when I got home, I've never owned a pair of colored socks. I always wore white. But anyhow, I was right on the verge of trench foot, but I managed to escape that. But anyhow, like I say, we were in rest area, and this one night I got sick, and I coughed, and I had to get out of the tent. We had pyramidal tents on, about 8 or 9 of us in a tent, and I had to get out of the tent and go because I know I was freezing heck with all the other guys in the tent. So the next morning I went sick call, and they sent me to the 8th Evacuation Hospital, and I was there a couple of days, and then they sent me to, I think, the 43rd Station Hospital. So I was there. Well, the orderlies were saying, "Boy, you're lucky, you're going home." And I said, "What do you mean going home?" Well, come to find out I had asthma. And I was 17 years old, or I just turned 18, And I had no idea what asthma was. So I went to the doctor, and he asked me, well, you know, when you got sick, did you cough up? I think, yeah, I was coughing up everything. I said, no, I had a cold. You know, I thought I had a cold. So anyhow, make a long story short, they sent me to a replacement depot, which was in Naples. It was the Mussolini's racetrack at one time. And that was a replacement depot that everyone went to wait transportation back wherever they were supposed to go. So I went there, and normally at the replacement depot, we were there for maybe a week home, maybe a little better than a week, and you get shipped out. So you got nothing to do. They said, walk around with a clipboard in your hand, and they'll give you a job. So I looked like I was busy. But anyhow, I wound up, I was there 3 weeks. I should have been out of here by now, because I figured I'd get out and go home. So I went up to headquarters, and just by a coincidence, I'll never know how this happened, but a coincidence, Harold Walker, who was a man I met, I think, in basic training. He was from Niagara Falls. In fact, I knew exactly where he lived. He lived on South Avenue, just down the street from where my aunt lived. But anyhow, he looked up my records. He said, you're supposed to be in Cairo, Egypt. And I said, well, I'm not. So, to make a long story short, they got orders for me to go back to the outfit. Well, before I went back, Mussolini's, the British Army had headquarters in Mussolini's, beautiful Mussolini's headquarters or whatever. Anyhow, I did get to peek in one time. Everything was all marble and beautiful. And up behind the place there were, I think there was 4 or 6 lakes or pools. And I mean, they were beautiful. The place was beautiful. But like I say, the British took it over as their headquarters. So anyhow, to make a long story short, I got an interview with a major. I'll never forget his name, Major Nelson. And he talked to me, and he said, okay. So next thing I knew, I was sent back to the outfit, right back up to the front. And talk about a homesick kid. You never saw a kid more homesick than I was. So, okay, we were scheduled to go, see, that was after the casino. We were scheduled to go to Rome. We didn't get up to Rome, but they had bypassed casino, and they were on their way to Rome. And I thought, well, I got a chance to go to Rome. But what happened, a little airplane came in. We're right out on the track waiting for transportation. Little airplane came in. Nope, they're not going to Rome. They're going back to Salerno to take amphibious train to invade southern France. So, oh no, I never did get to Rome. But anyhow, we went back to Salerno. We took amphibious training, and they made me a demolition man. And I blew up everything in sight. I'm trying to hype. You wouldn't believe how powerful some of that stuff was. Just an example, there was a 10-foot cube, solid cement, reinforced with railroad rails. We'd take a 24-pound satchel of explosive, put 2 on each side, set it off, and nothing left but a hole in the ground. And we learned how to blow up railroad rails, not ties, rails. In the article it said the ties, but the railroad rail, plastic explosive, 2 pieces about that big, put one on each side of the rail, it'd blow the rail right in 2. And that was done quite often to stop the Germans from using the railroad rail. So anyhow, I was taking basic training, and my job was to blow up the first, and the invasion was to blow up the first 100 yards of barbed wire. We had round piece of pipe, which is maybe 4 foot long, and it was filled with explosives. And they could clip them together, and the first one you could put a point on it, so it would go underneath the barbed wire, and they would clip together. You could just push them underneath the barbed wire, and you could stand from here to that chair. From the end of it, when it blew up, nothing would happen. But you go over 100 yards either side, it would just lay that barbed wire right over like that. So anyhow, about this time I got thinking, boy, I sure as heck don't want to go in southern France. So just by coincidence, I found out by smoking my pipe I could bring on an asthma attack. So I started smoking my pipe like mad. Well, incidentally, smoking cigarettes, we would get cigarettes free. Of course, they weren't Camels or Chesterfields or Lucky Strikes. These were off kind, like Chelsea's and names they never thought of. The rear echelon, they all got the good cigarettes. we got the leftover, but anyhow, there's better than nothing, I'd say. And in fact, in our K rations, they gave us a pack of 4 cigarettes in the K rations. So anyhow, like I say, I found out that by smoking that pipe, I could bring on an asthma attack. So I started smoking that. Well, this one night, before that, let me back up just a little bit. Before that, I was told by the medics, if you're getting an attack, let us know immediately. So this one night, I started smoking like mad, and I got a small asthma attack. The next morning, I went on sick call. They said, yep, you got it. So then, instead of sending me home, they sent me to the 43rd Station Hospital, just a little bit north of Caserta. They put me on guard duty there. Why, I don't know, but anyhow, they put me on guard duty there. So I was on guard duty with 3 or 4 other guys, and there were only 1 or 2 ex-infantrymen there. The rest of them were medics or whatever, and they were on guard duty. And the corporal guard, he was a medic also. Didn't know a gun from a whatever. But while we were there, the signal for an air raid, you'd fire a rifle. So on occasion, we'd have an air raid and we'd fire a rifle. But this one night, I don't know why, no, and incidentally, they passed the rifle back and forth from one guard to the other, So this one night, we had an air raid, and the rest of them all fired the rifle. I thought, I'm not going to fire mine, they all know it by now. So I didn't, but the next morning, I looked in the rifle, and I went to clean it, and I looked out, and the guy that had it before me, he was a medic, he would try to push a slug through the barrel, and it was jammed. If I ever fired that rifle, it would have blown up right in my face. So there was another.
A lot of coincidences here.
Oh, coincidence, I guess so. Oh, no, boy, don't you think I didn't go up and down him? Why, you stupid idiot. And here's a funny thing that happened. Like I say, myself and this 1 or 2 other guys, we were infantrymen, and we wanted to do some target practicing. So we told the corporal of the guard, that take us out someplace and let us fire our rifles. So okay, we went out a couple 100 yards away from the hospital, and he had an automatic pistol. He stood up, fired the pistol, hit the ground about there. We all turned around, walked right back, and said, we don't want nothing to do with this guy. So anyhow, let's see, where the heck did I go from there? Oh, I did bring on an asthma attack, and I went to, let me back up. They sent me to the 43rd Station Hospital, and I was there for, I guess, 3 weeks, and then they did send me to a replacement depot, and they put me on a boat and sent me home. I came home on a troop ship with a lot of Air Force men that were coming home to take training to go to the South Pacific. So got home in 5 days, as compared to 3 weeks going over.
What year was that?
Oh, that was the, about 1944, I guess, yeah.
Just before the end.
Yeah, so I came home, and I got 2 weeks leave when I got home. And I got into Rome on a train about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, how the heck am I going to get there on a Sunday night, incidentally? How the heck am I going to get home from here? Well, as a coincidence, Sam Lando, anyone remember him in the junkyard? He was on the train, and he got a taxi. Took me right straight home, right to my door.
Yeah.
So,
Good for me.
so like I say, I was crazy about flying. So the next morning, Monday morning, I got up, and the first thing I did was went up to Kansas Road Airport. And I told the pilots I want to go for an airplane ride. So, okay. Howard, I can't think of the name. I can't think of names when I'm trying to say something. Anyhow, the pilot said, okay, come on. So we climbed in the airplane. While we were up, I said, I'd kind of like to learn how to fly. He said, you want to take a first lesson now? I said, yes, sure. So I took my first lesson then. And like I said, I had 2 weeks leave. So at that time, you were supposed to have 8 hours of dual instruction before you could solo. Well, this instructor, luckily I knew quite a bit about flying. I'd never flown, but I knew, well, I'd say I never flown. I did go for airplane rides, but I never piloted a plane around, so I had basic knowledge of how they worked. So in other words, the tail, they just like a rudder in a boat, you know, go up and down. And so anyhow, the instructor, he knew I had to report back a certain time, so fortunately, he had me solo the morning before I went back. I had 3 hours and 20 minutes of dual instruction. He faked my logbook, said I had 8 hours, so that worked out all right. So I reported back. I had to report back to Lake Placid. They said, you're going up there to learn how to eat with a fork and learn how to talk straight. Not military language, civil language. So, and that was the best thing that ever happened. We got up there and the civilians were still running it. And they had 2 menus for every meal. In the morning, you had your choice of eggs or cereal or whatever. And for lunch, you know, like I said, they had 2 menus. You could take whatever you wanted. But and breakfast at 8 o'clock. And they had lectures they recommended you go to, but it wasn't compulsory. You could go if you wanted. So anyhow, the first couple mornings I got up and I went to have breakfast and I come back with, I didn't get staged in the big lounge. I was in one of the cabins just outside. So this one day I happened to come back to some breakfast about 8:30 or so, and I always got up and made my bed. And I got back and here there's a maid there tearing the bed down and remaking it. So I never made my bed after that. And everything there was free. Boats, horseback riding, anything you want to golf, anything you want to do was free. There was an airport just a little ways out, so myself and another friend, we got a couple horses and I rode up to the airport. I did go for an airplane ride there, but I'm lucky I didn't solo there because I would have got lost, because once you get up in the air, every pond looks the same, and I would have got lost. I would have been in trouble. But anyhow, I went through that, and myself and this other fellow, I couldn't tell you his name now, but we took a canoe out. Now this is in September now. And we took a canoe out, and I could tell he didn't know much about canoes, but you know, the weather wasn't all bad. It was a little chilly, but not too bad. But of course the water was cold. Anyhow, we got up the dock and I said, well, I want to get out. I said, you can take the canoe along if you want. I said, but be careful. I got out, the first thing you did. I said, be careful. Poor guy, he got soaked. So anyhow, like I say, after that, from Lake Placid, they sent me to Utica, to Rhodes General Hospital. It's not there anymore, but it was the hospital then. So I was there for a couple, 3 weeks, and then I was discharged from Rhodes Hospital. So I came home, fortunately.
A lot of others are coming home at the same time, you know.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yeah, I got a good conduct medal and the rifle combat.
Infantry badge.
Infantry.
Combat infantry
yeah.
badge.
And I make a joke saying that Hitler wanted to give me a medal because I shot it a couple of Germans and missed, but but that's about it, I guess.
What was coming home like? Like formally coming back to home?
Oh, well, what do you mean?
Did you have a sense of relief? Were you tired? What was that?
Oh yeah. Well, of course, I had a lot of rest and things up at Lake Placid, but yeah, I had to laugh, kind of. We lived on, my mother and father lived on Cottage Place at that time in the backyard. Oh, had hay flowers, a pool and all that, and he had a hammock out there. This one day I was asleep in the hammock, and my mother said, hey, you know, I was awake just that quick. I'm so used to waking up quick like that. But I finally did calm down, let's say.
What was your most memorable experience overseas?
Torpedo River.
What was that?
Trying to
I
get
don't
across
wanna
it.
talk about it? Okay.
Not talk about it.
All right.
Torpedo River and Casino, I did happen, fortunately, I saw Mount Vesuvius erupt. And that was beautiful. At night, we could see it from where we were. And coming from Caserta to Naples, you could ride the train. And I had a picture I'd taken from the train, and I looked behind, though I can't find that, but it's a beautiful picture. casino and the smoke coming up. And at night, it was beautiful. See the lava coming down. And I forgot the name of the little towns down at the bottom of it, or near the bottom, that some of the lava did go in, and it came down the main street, or not the main street, but it came down one of the streets, and a big high, looked like a big pile of mud coming down through, and the lava was still hot, but not all that hot. And some of the guys, they'd take a coin and they'd push it into this lava, and then when it cooled, they'd have a good souvenir. They'd break the chunk off and have a nice souvenir. I never had a coin, so I didn't. And speaking of that, our foolish government now, they say they're not going to pay the soldiers. Well, all the time overseas, we never did get a full pay. We'd get $10 once in a while, and that did nothing to spend it on.
Yeah.
We didn't
Need it.
didn't get a full pay until we got home. But and at that time, we were getting $40 a month, and when we got in combat, we'd get $44 a month. How times have changed, huh? But well, let's see. After I came home, I roamed around for a little while, and I had to get a job. So, see, I worked. My father and uncle, they were in Oneida Limited. Oneida Limited bought both of them down from Niagara Falls from the WWII Riders Company. In fact, excuse me. In fact, they moved us down to Oneida, I think about 1930, right after the Depression. Now, my uncle came down here in about 1925, and they moved my father and mother and sister and I down here in about 1930, when the Depression was on, and my dad went to work for Oneida Limited, and we were here almost a year, and all that year's time he never worked a full week. So finally it got down where he was working maybe one day a week, and he told Oneida Limited that I can't live on this. Well, fortunate, we owned land back just outside of Niagara Falls on a farm, a muck farm it was, so we went back and we did farming for a while, and then I had grandparents that lived in California, Los Angeles. And they said, well, why don't you come out to California? Maybe we can find work out here. So, okay, we did. We packed up, and I'll never forget, on the bed before we left, they were on the bed counting the money. He had exactly $200 when we left. We had a 1928 Chevy four-door sedan. My mother and father and sister and myself and a big dog climbed in the car, and we headed for California. And I think it took us 2 weeks to get there. And my mother kept a log, and I have seen the log around the house a couple times. I looked for it before it came down. I couldn't find it. She kept kind of a diary on our trip. And an example, in one entry would be, we made 250 miles today. We had a good day. And my dad wrote in, we spent more money with oil than we did with gasoline. Well, I think it was about 40 cents a quart. Gasoline was maybe 10, 15 cents a gallon, you know. But, and anyhow, we were out in California, and things didn't go good there. We were out there just a year. And while we were there, I was 32, they had the earthquake. And when the earthquake came, we had been visiting someone, and we were on a bridge coming back to my aunt's house, and the car started shimmying. Well, that back when the front wheels on a car would shimmy, you know. My dad said, this darn car is shimmying, you go like that. We didn't know it was an earthquake until we saw the chimneys on houses falling off. Dad, oh my God, there's an earthquake. So, anyway, we got back to my aunt's house, or my grandmother's house rather, and we got out of the car and we looked down the road, and the road was like that. And the waves came up to us and knocked us all right flat on our fannies. So we got up and we spent the whole night in the living room of the house because it had a chandelier and it would start shaking. And we'd see, oh, here comes another one. Speaking of that, before Vesuvius erupted, we were, I was about 23, 24 miles away, and for about 2 weeks before Vesuvius erupted, the ground would shake. It was like your house would shake when a big heavy truck went by. Not much that you would notice it, but if you were sitting still, you would notice it. And that was prior to Vesuvius erupting. And one other thing, most of the small streams and ponds, they were warm. Some of them were so hot you couldn't get in, but that was from underground water coming up from Vesuvius. So, but of which is nice. We had to test it, every string we went in before we got in it. But, okay, now let's get back to Oneida. Forgot where it was.
After the
In
war.
California.
After the war. did you-
California, okay. Yeah, we had to come back from California. And would you believe, now this is very unusual for a car in those days. We had one flat tire all the way out and all the way back on that car. And like I say, we spent more money on changing the oil. Because the oil, that was back when you had to change the oil every so many miles. So, but, we got to just this side of Chicago, and something happened to one of the bearings. No, I don't know if it was a bearing or not. Anyhow, it turned out we didn't dare shut the car off. We kept the car running from then all the way back home. So we got home, and at that time my dad still says, well, I don't know what the heck we're going to do. So he had an opportunity to go to Detroit, to Toledo rather, to work in the automobile factory. So he went to Toledo, and my mother and sister and myself, along with a couple of hired hands from Oneida, Polish kids, real good kids. They helped us run the farm. And like I say, it was a muck land. And we raised vegetables. And, my dad used to say, well, we not have any money, but we're always going to eat, which was true. We had vegetables, all kinds of vegetables. But our mother would take them to the Niagara Falls market Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we kept that up for a while. And then my dad did get an offer to come back down to Oneida. So let me say one time, the first time we came to Oneida, we had to move back. We moved back in July. I had the mumps, hot as it all get out. They put me in the bathtub while they were loading. But anyhow, after he came back to Oneida, like I say, Oneida Limited asked him to come back, and we moved back in 1938. We arrived in Oneida in 1938, and here's a strange coincidence that would never happen again in 100 years. We had a 1936 Pontiac at that time, and the neighbors, Taylors were their name. They lived next door to us, Roy and Jane Taylor, and I think there was one other boy. But anyhow, they had a 1936 Chevy. Believe it or not, our key would fit their car, and their key would fit our car. We had a Pontiac and a Chevy both sitting. That was a coincidence you never know happened. So anyhow, like I say, my dad had an opportunity to go back to Oneida Limited. Well, I was out of work, so I wasn't the only one. There were a lot of us that got back. And here's another strange thing. Came home on leave one time, and Ken Perkins was a friend of mine. He was a couple years older than I was, and he had joined the Navy. He happened to be home on leave at the same time I was home. We wanted to go hunting. So now Ken was in the Navy. He was on board a Liberty ship. He was a gun captain on a 5-inch gun all through the North Atlantic when they were having so much problem with the subs and everything. Well, he got credit for sinking a sub with his gun. And like I say, I had been in combat, so we wanted to go hunting. So we went down to a hardware store, Siegler and Stouts, down on Madison Street, about where the furniture store is now. Anyhow, we went in and we said, I wanted to buy some 22 shells, he wanted to buy some shotgun shells. They wouldn't sell them to us. We weren't old enough. You had to be 21, neither one of us.
We have a story with one of the other veterans coming home and waiting for his train, ordered a beer, and the police officer kicked him out because he wasn't 21 and he couldn't drink the beer yet. So they kicked him out in his military uniform, out.
I found that right in the train going down through Virginia. I couldn't get a beer. Yep. But anyhow, we were so dumbfounded we just looked at each other and walked out. So anyhow, to go on from there, I needed a job. So as luck would have it, there were several of us that got home from the service, and we were all looking for jobs. Well, Oneida Limited did us a great favor. They sent up a program. What do I want to say? For us to
Training?
Training. They set up a program, and they got it approved by the government. So we got the GI Bill of Rights to subsidize our program.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 5-year program, just like college, you might say. And because Oneida Limited only paid us 55 cents an hour, but the government gave us money. So anyhow, while I was waiting for that, I got a job working at Wagner Machine Shop, which was good training because it was parallel to pretty much what I was doing, going to do at night. So like I say, we went through 5-year traineeship there, and I joined out and turned out to be a master ornamental die sinker. And I used to go back to work nights and work on my own time designing spoons. And I had a couple of spoons that Night Limited made, and I didn't get any money for it, but got a big attaboy from some of the...
When did you start playing in the band?
Oh gosh, I started playing the band, I was still in high school. I forgot all about that band work. Yeah,
That's where I remember you
yeah, I was still in high school.
playing in the band.
Yeah, and when I was in the service, the USO would come in or something, and I'd ask if I could, sit in with the band. Once in a while, they'd let me. But speaking of the USO, I saw Joey Brown. He came through. We could hear him coming from the tents way down. He'd give a yell, and he finally got to our tent. And Red Skelton, he came.
Never saw Bob Hope, though.
Yeah.
Bob Hope was after World War II,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
That's when I know he was in the Korean War, he used to go over.
Yeah, and Ernie Pyle. I didn't see him, but who was the guy that was in This Is the Army show? He was a singer.
George Coleman? Oh, he's
I think so. Anyhow, we as luck would have it, I did have to see that show. It was a terrific show. Terrific show. All that was overseas.
Dean Martin?
Dean Martin?
Dean
Martin Lewis?
Dean Martin?
Was it Martin Lewis?
No,
No, he
no,
would have
Dean
been,
Martin.
he would have been too young,
Well,
yeah.
I don't think he was even heard of at that time. Maybe he was. I don't remember.
Eddie
Maybe
Cantor?
I get the wrong one.
Eddie Cantor?
No, we didn't see him either. No.
Hmm.
Some of them we missed, but we enjoyed the ones we did see.
You got to play in the band occasionally.
Yeah.
Now, what
Yeah.
instrument did you play then?
Okay.
What instrument?
I played the drums.
Oh,
Yeah, that was funny. My first playing job, Venus Strong, I remember her name. She lived on Oneida Castle.
Venus Strong.
You remember, did that name ring a bell?
No, Strong.
Anyhow, she was a piano player. And she had a job playing at Major's Tavern in Rome, which was right near the railroad tracks as you go into Rome, just before you get to the motel on the right. And she and we played there. We got $4 a night. Anyhow, then I went on, I joined up with our French's band
Yeah.
I played with him for
He was great.
14, 15 years. And then I formed my own band, had my own. And my one claim to fame, we played at the Gold Room, I guess, in the Hotel Syracuse one time. We had a job up there, and it was funny. Billy Bartell played trumpet with us. He played with the Salt City Six for a while. Or trumpet, he played the trombone rather. But the job we had at the hotel, we had to wait. Whatever function was going on, we had to wait. So we waited down the bar. We got half smoked up before we got up started to play. But to play, and I tell you, that 10 minutes, it's a good thing I got out of that because I would have been a confirmed alcoholic or dead, one or two by this time. Well, speaking of that smoking, I gotta go back to tell you how I should have been dead. Because I started smoking at age 6, believe it or not, smoking corn silk.
Huh.
Well then, I don't know if any of you ever knew that you could smoke grapevine. Grapevine, you get a piece of grapevine about as big around my finger, and it was porous. Get a piece about that long, you could light it, you could smoke it. We smoked that, and then I'd walk along the road, I'd pick up big cigarette butts along the road and light them and smoke those.
This couldn't have been good for the asthma.
maybe why you got asthma if you started smoking at 6.
Yeah.
But then, on top of that, like I
There you
said,
go. You're the one person that can say smoking saved my life.
yeah, maybe. But I used to chew on lead sinkers. Yeah, because they were soft and all that.
Yeah, you could chew them like gum.
Yeah.
Oh.
And where we lived, up at the end of the street was what we called the tar barrels. It was the Oneida's old road place, DW. And they had tar barrels up there, and they kept their trucks up there, and we'd go up there, we'd chew on tar. And, this friend of mine, Kenny Perkins, I mentioned him before, he lived just on Tilden Street, just behind us. Somewhere he got a hold of some mercury. You had about a teaspoonful of mercury, we put it in the hand, roll back and forth.
That one I've heard before.
I'm guilty of that.
And, I don't know, like I say, then, and, oh God, I smoked for years and years and years. And when I quit smoking, now a lot of people say they have such a hard time quitting. When I quit, I had no idea I was gonna quit. I just stopped. I had a cold, so I didn't want to smoke anyhow, but I just quit. I didn't have any problem, no.
Well, it was probably some combination of the grape, the mercury, and the tar that works together and actually is a fantastic quitting agent.
Something good after he quit.
Yeah, that was about, right now, probably 20 years ago, I quit smoking. So, but that's about it.
Any other questions for Leonard?
You know, you were really lucky that they didn't send you to the Pacific.
Yeah, well, yes, that's one thing I forgot to mention. I don't think the 36th ever did go, but we had a meeting, some General Walker, I think, got us all, our battalion on a big, he said, okay, you guys think when you get to Europe, forget it, you're going to Pacific after Europe. That made everybody happy, but no, they I don't think they ever went.
The Army never admitted that there was an awful lot of guys that went AWOL. When
Yeah.
they said, left Europe, you're going to Pacific, they went AWOL.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
They're not, they weren't
Speaking of
going.
that, General Patton, you people ever heard of that name?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I didn't see this happen, but I'm pretty sure it was true. He slapped a soldier
Yeah,
because the soldier said he didn't want to go back to the front. Patton slapped him.
Yeah.
yeah,
It was quite well documented.
Patton was a glory hunter.
yeah.
He had a pearl handle pistol on
Your
his hip.
blood and his guts.
Yep, yep. Blood and guts Patton, we call him.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think anyone shed a tear. He got killed in a Jeep accident in Germany. I don't think anybody shed a tear when that happened because he didn't fare well too much with the Army.
no.
So,
You know what was interesting was about Eisenhower. When Eisenhower was elected president and they wanted to give pay raises to the military, Eisenhower said, enlisted men don't need it. They'd only spend it on women and booze.
well, yeah, that could happen.
What Eisenhower did
Yeah.
is he made a golf course on every military installation in the U.S.
Yeah.
He was the president that was responsible for that.
I was out about that time.
Yeah, he wanted to, wherever he landed, he wanted to be able to play golf.
But speaking of booze, it was kind of funny, but it wasn't funny too. Every little town we'd take, boy, the wine was beautiful, terrific. 2 weeks later than that, it was terrible. You know, they'd water it down, they'd do anything, you know. But and one other thing, almost all little towns, or big towns too, they had a big square with a fountain in it. The Italians were great for fountains, water fountains and so forth. And another thing that was rather interesting, most of the towns that I was in, except for big towns, Caserta and Naples and so forth, the streets were so narrow, a 10-ton truck, they didn't have sidewalks. The Italians, before they go out, they'd open the door and look because a truck would go down through there, and a truck couldn't make the turf. You'd have to back up and go ahead because the streets are so narrow.
Were the people glad to see you as you came up through Italy? Were the people glad to see the Americans? Or were they looking upon you as conquerors?
they were. Well, let's say once again when we first overtake a place and liberated them, so to speak. Yeah, they couldn't do enough for us.
Oh.
But then afterwards, of course, things got old fat, you know.
Right.
But no, generally speaking, they were all right. He had one guy. His name was Sam, and he had been to the United States, and he spoke real good English, and he did us a lot of favors. When I was up in the hospital, he was really good. And they said at one time that all the Italian people, their one goal in life was to get to the United States, make $2,000 and come back home, because they said they could retire on $2,000. But that's about it.
Did you ever go back?
No. Out of curiosity, I'd kinda like to, but no. No,
Have you been to Washington to that memorial?
pardon?
Have you been to Washington DC?
Yeah.
World War II.
World War
Yeah,
II
we went to that,
memorial?
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of that, I don't know if my pension's gonna get cut off or not, the way this. I thought I've got a deal, they could end this whole shutdown in less than 5 days. Put all the people that are negotiating in one room with no toilet. They will let you out when you reach a decision.
They'll take care of it, school.
It's about as sound logic as you can have. Congress doesn't go by those rules.
I would guarantee within 5 days they'd have a decision.
Well, I think if you cut the politicians' pay off,
Yeah.
no, you don't get paid until you come up with a
Yeah,
solution.
yeah, I have also
Well, you'll get
suggested that.
them hustling.
Yeah, because
It's
they're,
baloney.
you know, it's gotten personal now, and that's too bad.
Thank you, Leonard.
Yeah, well, I hope I enlightened you a little
It
bit.
was interesting.
I-
Very
I-
interesting,
like
yeah.
that, but-
Very nice that
Thank
you
you.
shared it with us.